I'm Kira Donnelly, and this is the first episode of Post-Grad Zoom Chats, where I catch up with some of the members of my graduating class and see a year past graduation, what everyone's been up to. In this first episode, I talk with my friend Emma Vandevelde. Emma was a transfer into our program, and she studied musical theater. Notably, on campus, Emma starred as the lead role of Rita in the musical Steel Pier, and she opened a chapter of Delight Ministries on our campus. Since graduating, Emma has moved to Chicago. In this episode, we're going to talk about how she's created an intentional community for herself within the arts and outside of the arts in Chicago. Also, how she's adapted to the different skill sets that the industry in Chicago is looking for. And then we also discuss her new podcast that she's started with our fellow alum, Philip Rast, discussing the intersectionality of faith and the arts. Emma has a lot of wonderful advice to offer in this video. I really hope that you connect with her and that you enjoy it. So, will you take me through, like, you moved to Chicago. There you are, Day one. And I know maybe your living situation shifted a few times, but will you take me through, like, you moved there and what that was like first arriving?
Totally. So, again, like I said, I didn't know like anyone moving there. So I ended up meeting like two random girls on Facebook and being like, yeah, you seem pretty normal. Like, let's look for an apartment together. But at the time I was on this contract in Pennsylvania doing 9 shows a week. So I didn't have time to like sit and like look through all these listings and like find something wonderful. So I basically just trusted these girls to like find a place.
Yeah.
And so genuinely, Kira, like when I first got there, I was like, oh my gosh, this place, it's nice now and we've like fixed it up, but like clearly some very messy people had lived there. So when I first got there, when we first pulled up, I remember getting into my apartment, my mom was with me, and I looked at my room and it was so small and I was like, oh no, I was like, this is gonna be so hard, blah, blah, blah. And then I like put my stuff in my room and I was like, fine. And it was just me being dramatic, but
well, it's a big transition. It's okay to be a little dramatic.
Yeah, either way, it was like hard, but then just like not knowing these girls, I was like, hi, like never met you. Now we live together. Like just,
yeah. Were they artists or actors?
One of them was a dancer and the other one she was like a vocalist in college and like she worked for nonprofits and she actually worked for this like really cool dinner circus downtown Chicago.
Okay.
So yeah, they didn't come from like a BFA background. And then one of them ended up moving out and getting another place. And then another roommate moved in probably like 2 months into all of us living together. And that current roommate, the one who moved in later, I'm getting another apartment with Hannah Dahl from Coastal.
Oh, nice. August. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay. So it all ended up working out.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. So whenever you got there, how did you start approaching your career?
So there was like a Facebook page where I could find auditions. There's this website called Theater in Chicago that posts like all of the auditions. And it was really just like a lot of trial and error. Because New York audition season is different than Chicago audition season. In New York, it's like 3 months of like balls to the walls. Like you could go to like 17 auditions a day. You just have to decide. In Chicago, there will be like 3 weeks at a time, 3 weeks at a time, 3 weeks at a time, where like there will be a lot of auditions. So it's different. So when I first got there, like literally the day after I moved in, I had an audition. And so I was just like, I don't know. And like, I had just heard, it's so funny when I think back now, I'm like, what did I think I was doing? Like I went to my first audition at the studio called Porch Light, which is like kind of hard to get to. And, you know, all of my experience auditioning in New York has been like, girl, you're non-ec. You get there at the butt crack of dawn.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, the audition starts at 9. I got to get there at 7. And I got there at 7 and literally no one showed up, including the monitor, for like another hour and a half. So
wow.
Yeah.
That's so, refreshing. Yeah, not for that day, but for future notice.
Right. Yeah. So it was a lot of like asking around. It was a lot of just kind of like doing research. It was a lot of trial and error. I got a voice teacher pretty quickly. My friend Tim, his mom is a voice teacher and has been in Chicago forever. And she is incredible. Her name is Mary. So I started with her pretty quickly, and she was like the most wonderful source of not only like help with my voice, but also just knowledge about the theater industry. She just knows everything. She was able to like, I don't know, she was able to get me into some auditions because she knew some casting directors. So it was just a really good connection to have. So I don't know. I would say that like once I got there, pursuing my career more meant like pursuing connections and like fostering those. Yeah. So that was that, which was
Gotcha.
cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you kind of like, you made the jump before you had all the pieces together. And then you just kind of, you figured it out as you went, and connections were a big part of that. Just like meeting people, finding information from them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is the atmosphere pretty friendly there? Are people there to help build each other up?
Yeah. I mean, I would say like, you know, the term like empty hunty that everyone said at Coastal?
Yes.
Like the stereotype of like the musical
empty musical theater. I thought you meant like empty. Like empty.
Oh yeah, like empty. I mean, are they
also
different? I don't know. But so like I would say that Chicago is very like not that way.
Okay.
Like you walk into an audition in Chicago and it's cool because like all of you will be going in for the same parts, or like all of you. Like what I like about it is that the callbacks that I would go to, I would walk into the room and there'd be like 6 girls sitting there and none of them would look like me, or none of them would have the same vibe as me. And so I think that what Chicago does is like, and I don't want to say that New York doesn't do this because I don't know. I've never lived in that environment, but I feel like with New York, there's this like pressure of the industry, like this capitalistic pressure of Broadway. It's like an industry, and it's like you have to put out things that are going to make money. You have to put out things that are going to appeal to mass groups of people.
Right.
And in Chicago, it's like there is some really cool and weird art in Chicago and some really commercial art, but it's being supported by its own communities and not by tourists coming in from like high and low to like see Aladdin. You know what I mean?
Right, definitely.
So that's what I loved about it, which is funny because like I am a musical theater performer. Like that's what I got at Coastal, like all that stuff. But I think that what it's done is there is so many different kinds of work in Chicago. And everyone is so nice. Like I met some of my best friends in holding rooms just being like, hey, I always see you at auditions and we're always freaking here so early because we're non-ec. Like, what's your name? Like, you know,
that's the dream.
So
that's what, because that makes the audition process enjoyable, I would think.
Exactly. It's not as stressful. I mean, yeah. So I just think and I don't, again, like I've been to like a handful, like I guess a solid amount of auditions in New York, and it's just like more saturated. There's just more people.
Right.
So it's just a different environment. You're not necessarily seeing the same people like over and over and over again, you know?
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so are you satisfied with the career progress you had in that year, or has that redefined in your mind about what satisfaction looks like? What do you think about that?
I love that question, Kira.
Thanks.
I mean, just being totally real, like there's literally no reason to not be real, is like I genuinely thought this is literally my own thing. But again, I didn't really know much about the market. I really thought that I was going to get there and it was going to be easy for me to book something.
Right. I think we all think that when we graduate.
I know everyone's
even
like,
though we've always heard it's hard. Yeah, yes.
Exactly. So, I mean, in terms of like satisfaction, I would say like, if you would have told me a year ago, Emma, you're going to move to Chicago and you are, I'm not going to say like you're not going to book anything because I ended up getting like a lovely job for the summer that didn't end up happening, but like you didn't get anything in Chicago. Like that didn't come through. I would have been like, what? That's super annoying. But I think
maybe
that in
I won't
terms
go
of
there.
like, I know, yeah, maybe I won't go there. It totally, because yeah. So I mean, I would say satisfaction. Like I am satisfied with the things that I've been able to do and afford to do because of being in the market that I was in. Like I was able to get signed, which was amazing. And I think that that was like a huge blessing in the midst of like some just really weird circumstances. I was connected with Brown Management Group, which has been huge, wonderful, and I love them dearly. And I was also able to take a class because, I mean, it's just cool because it's like I wasn't working on a project day in and day out. So I was able to take a class at Acting Studio Chicago called Acting for the Camera, which was so fun and so informative. And so I think that like now I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with like what I got to do this year professionally. And it's just funny because I wouldn't have said that a year ago.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's like, it's one of those things. And I was actually talking, we haven't talked about the podcast at all, but Philip Rast and I, another alumni, have a podcast called Narrowway to Broadway, which is all about navigating the arts through like a lens of faith. And we interviewed Quentin Darrington, who was in a billion Broadway shows and who's amazing. And I asked him kind of a similar question about like, what have you learned? Like, what's been really good advice? And he just said, like, you have to remember that this is a long game. Like, this is not a sprint, that this career and what we want to do and what we're trying to accomplish here is a marathon.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think that once I changed my perspective to like, I have to book within a year, I'm a failure. Like, I was like, whoa, like the pressure is off me, you know?
Yeah. Right.
So
you just got to keep waking up and doing it or doing something or recharging yourself so you can keep doing it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's kind of like satisfaction. I mean, I don't think any of us, I think that we as artists are wired almost in a way to be unsatisfied. And I think that's why we create the art that we do, because we believe that art can like make the world better.
Right.
Yeah. And I believe that we are constantly being like, I can do better. I can refine more. I can learn more. But I think that, I don't know, maybe satisfaction and contentment are two different things, because I think I'm very content.
Yeah.
But like, I think that there's always going to be a little part of me and like other artists that it's like, we're never satisfied, you know?
I will never be satisfied.
I will never be satisfied.
Exactly.
Come on, go off. Yeah.
That's dropping this weekend, isn't it? Hamilton's coming to Disney Plus this weekend. Yeah.
Come on, Disney Plus. Everyone's paying that $8 fee.
I know, it's worth it.
Yeah, totally. I love it.
Okay, so real quick, will you talk about income, survival jobs, like what you've done to provide for yourself while in Chicago?
Totally. Yes. So one thing that I have done is nannying, because I love kids. I would say if you love kids, it's a great gig. It is not taxed, and you get to just hang out with babies all day. Like, oh my goodness. So I have some families that I just love dearly, and they have been a huge part of like making me feel at home in Chicago. So I nanny, and then I also work at a gym. I work at an Equinox that just opened up in Lincoln Park. And I work in the kids club. So again, working with kids, that's how I find a lot of my nanny families. And I get a free gym membership, which thank you, God.
Yes.
So that's what I do mostly. And then I also was employed by a temp agency when I first got there, when I was still like looking for something more consistent. And I got to do like some random, really fun and funny things, like working this like floral fashion show, which was fun, and like working at a desk for a real estate company. It was just fun for like administrative work for like here and there kind of cash. I've also been doing like some voiceover work.
Nice.
I am hoping to take a class on voiceovers, because voiceovers are like huge in Chicago. They're like a big thing. It's very, very competitive. Like that's a very competitive market in Chicago. So I'm like, I should probably like get into that. So yeah, so I've been doing a little bit of that. And I think that, I did the weirdest thing ever. So there was this company called Kirkland & Ellis. They're not a company, they're a law firm. And they do this conference every year. I can't remember what it's called, but they do this conference for their like litigators in training for these students in law school to practice like oral delegation.
Okay.
And so they hire actors to pose as witnesses in these
That's so fun.
mock trials. It was so funny. It was like a TV show, because I had to like study and like be these characters essentially, so that they could practice like questioning and then cross like examining me.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Oh gosh. So that was really, really fun. And that was like really good money. So that was, I don't know, I'd just say like
Wow.
look out for like some things that you can get involved in that are not normal or typical. So
Yeah. Cool. So
that was
would you
fun.
say if you're moving to New York, sorry, Chicago, say you have very
Yeah.
limited savings, maybe you have nothing, or maybe you have enough to get you by for a couple weeks,
Yeah.
and you don't have parents offering to help you with rent. I mean, is it doable, or like how much would you recommend coming in with, in your
Yeah.
savings
I
account?
mean, I would say so. I think like I remember someone telling us, I think it might have been Alexa, who had some amazing advice for the New York market. I think she said that like minimum moving to New York, you're going to want like at least 3 grand because you're just going to like totally like, you know, spend through it. I would
Mm-hmm.
say Chicago, like because not the living wage, because the cost of living is so much lower, you can afford to like get there with like, I would say like 2 grand because
Yeah.
or like even like $1,000 or like $500 as long and you could be
Mm-hmm.
interviewing things before you
Right.
get there.
Yeah.
So I think that it's honestly, to me, it's less about like um I observed that it was less about how much I had saved up and more about my willingness to say yes to opportunities right when I got there, even if
Mhm.
I didn't want to like pursue those long term,
Yeah.
you know?
Sure.
So yeah, so I think that Chicago is a way more affordable place to live than New York or than LA.
Yeah.
Like I think my apartment probably costs like half as much as a lot of my friends are paying in New York.
Okay.
So I think
Are you comfortable putting a number to that?
yeah. So I live in Wrigleyville, which is right next to the um, Cubs Stadium, which is super fun area. It's like
Yeah.
safe, not sketchy. And I only pay $650 a month plus utilities,
Wow.
which like
You
depending
can't
on where
even
you
find that in
are, it's like a lot
Atlanta.
of the yeah, and
Yeah.
or in Charlotte. So I mean, and my so I would say like if you if you can pay anywhere from like even like 550 to 850, you can get like a solid place like in a good area in
Mm.
Chicago.
Okay.
So yeah,
That's awesome. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. And then can you touch a little bit on like your personal life in the past year in Chicago, like how you've gotten connected
yeah,
and found joy around you?
yeah, totally. I I knew like going into Chicago that I wanted to get plugged in at a church. It's been like a super big part of my life
Yeah.
for like ever. And so I was like, okay, I want to find a place to worship. And so it was so cool because I posted on Facebook that I was moving there, and a friend that I had gone to school with in middle school messaged me, and she was like, I'm just moving there too. Like I just tried out this church called Soul City Church Chicago, and I really like it. Would you want to come with me? And so I went with her, and like kind of the rest is history. We are like great friends, and
Mm.
she was able to be connected to another girl who was connected to more girls. So like I have just some amazing community from my church in Chicago. And from that, like we've had small groups and stuff. And so it's become a big part of like my week is
Hmm.
like social interaction with
Yeah.
people,
That's
which is nice.
amazing.
Yeah, which is nice. And it's so crazy too, because it's like, I could have found a church anywhere, but I really believe that like I was supposed to be in Chicago at this church for the time being
Yeah.
because of the friendship that it's brought me. And when I think about Chicago and the last year, it's interesting because all the questions have been um, so career focused in a lot of circles right now. But it's like, I feel like my time in Chicago has been marked by like friendship.
Mm.
Um, which is just a huge blessing. So yeah,
Absolutely.
that's like brought me so much joy, and I feel so lucky because I went in knowing no one, and now, I'm getting ready to go back, and I have this great community, and I also have like all these friends moving there, and it's
Yeah.
just, I don't know. I think it's
You're
like
making
it
me want to
really,
move. I'm like ready to pack
I
my
know,
bags.
let's go. Honestly, just saying, I can talk anyone into moving to Chicago clearly.
I believe
Because here
that.
we are. Yeah. So yeah, that's been a huge part of it. And I think too, like even if like religion isn't something that you're into, or like you're not interested in like a church community, like I think seeking mentorship or seeking community that has nothing to do with the career that we are in
Yeah.
is very valuable. Because I think when we talked about kind of perspective earlier, it's like I think this whole year I've learned so much about like um my art is not about me and my career isn't about me,
Mm.
and it's about like serving a piece, and it's about serving others, and in my belief like it's about like serving the God I worship. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of those things of like, if I only know people and surround myself with people who are desperate for this dream, then that's going to be my whole mental like space all the
Yeah. Oh,
time.
sure.
And it's just not healthy. So it's been fun to have friends. You know, one of my friends is like a designer for Pepsi. One of my friends is like a financial wealth management person at like a bank. Like, you know, I'm just like friends with normal
Yeah.
people. So that's been
What?
huge. Yeah,
Yeah.
what? Normal people? So I don't know. That's been a big part of it. And it's weird because it's like if you would have asked me a year ago, like, what is your biggest piece of advice for people who are still in school in a BFA?
Yeah.
I'd be like, get equity points before you leave. but
Okay.
but like now I'm like, find community outside of theater, which is such a weird thing to
Mhm.
say. You know, it's good for your heart and it makes your art
Yeah.
better, you know?
Yeah. And if it makes your
So
life better, yeah, it makes your art better for sure. You're
yeah,
becoming more
yeah,
well-rounded human being.
right. Totally, totally. Yeah. So
I think that's a good place for you to talk a little bit about your podcast too. I know you mentioned it, but do you want to like give a
yeah,
little plug and talk about it?
absolutely. So, um, Philip Rast, he's a year older than us. He also went to Coastal. He and another alum actually named Michaela had a blog when they first went to Coastal called Narrow Way to Broadway. And it was just basically to like connect faith and the arts, which was like a part of their lives that was just two huge parts of their lives that they wanted to connect. And so, you know, Philip and I would touch base over the year and just be like, what's up, and talk. And then literally one day I texted him and I was like, I just keep feeling like this idea is something that like it has a lot of potential. And I think that we should investigate maybe making it into a podcast. And he texted me back and said, I was literally about to text you the same thing. So I was like,
Oh
okay,
my gosh.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then COVID happened and we were like, okay, this is going to happen. And so basically the idea, we have like three like action words, if you want to say, in the words of active verbs and, you know, acting too. But like we aim to like edify, which is build up, unify, and fortify. So like strengthen the theater community and the faith community. And I don't know, it's just been really hard because we've observed a lot of like, there's just this really large gap a lot of the times between communities of faith or religion and communities in theater, because a lot of the time, unfortunately, people end up in communities in theater because they were burned by the church.
Right.
And
Or
we are
life.
just like,
Yeah.
yeah, or life, or just
Mm-hmm.
anything. And so we just feel like such a part of our art and a part of our ministry is like, where is this disconnect and where can there be reconciliation, and where is like there a God in all of this?
Yeah.
um and so a lot of it has just been us praying like, God, just bring us people who you want their voices to be heard, which has just been crazy because like I know, like, you know, I feel like I have a lot of connection in the theater circles, but
Yeah.
our reach can only extend so far. And so like people have been like reaching out to us, or we've had friends who are like, you should interview this person or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
interview this person. And it's just been the most wonderful experience. Like I have met so many, obviously like wonderful performers and actors, but also people who just have such a passion for speaking into the lives of like
Mm-hmm.
younger people like us who are just getting started. Um, so yeah, that's been like a huge, amazing, fun project. And I don't know, I feel like if nothing else, like I believe that like God has used it to just speak into my own life. And I just
Yeah.
think about these conversations I get to have with these people and just be like, wow, like I never thought of it that way, or wow, this is so cool, or wow, maybe I should look into that, you know? So that has been like a huge, huge blessing so far in 2020. And a lot of our like people from Coastal, like are some of our favorite, like avid, loyal listeners. And we're like, ah,
Yeah.
yes.
Aw.
So yeah, it's been awesome. It's like one of my favorite things that I get to do with my life.
Yes. Oh, that's awesome. So like, and you
Yeah,
found joy and purpose in that as well as theater. And then they kind of, they bridge together. So
totally. Yeah,
that's
totally. Because
awesome.
it's an art, like it's not necessarily like theater art, but
No,
podcast, like making
it's
a podcast
content
it's
creation.
creating.
Yeah,
Yeah, totally.
definitely.
So yeah, it's been
Good.
really, really awesome. And I'm really grateful for our guests, and I'm really grateful for like the community of listeners. And I'm so grateful for Philip because he's been like doing all of like the tech work, and I'm just like la 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 la, you know, doing what I do.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's been
Aw.
awesome.
Well, I hope that if people find this video, then they can find Narrow Way to Broadway and become
Yeah.
even more connected into that circle.
Yes, I hope so
Yes.
too.
And then
Yes, I love
so
it.
you are such a positive person and like this has been such like a joy-filled interview. But I do want
Yeah.
to talk about, the first year is hard, like we've established that. You go through a lot of challenge.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe thinking back to a time where you were struggling or a particular thing that has come up in your life over the past year, how would you say you've gotten through it?
Yeah. So one thing that has just been a theme of this year for me um has been this theme of like honestly just vocational anonymity. Like I just feel like, and again, I don't want to like make this like a super like religious answer, but I feel like
Yeah, no.
it's hard for me to talk about this year like without talking about what I feel like has been happening in my faith. And
Yeah,
I just feel
do
like
it.
I feel like I got really close to a lot of really cool opportunities in Chicago with my career. Um, I just remember my first like really hard no was for this play that was being workshopped and developed, and it was based on the Bronte sisters. And I was like
Mm.
called in for one of the three girls, and I like was in final callbacks, and I really thought like I was gonna get it. I really did. I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
this is gonna be amazing. And it just didn't happen. It like didn't come through. And I just remember being like, oh, gosh, like I just really wanted this. Like I really wanted
Mm.
this, and I feel like I did a good job and I worked hard. And I just feel like one of these themes in my life is like it isn't about what you want. It's about what art you are using to serve others and what kind of art you're using to like be a servant to the piece. And
Mhm.
so I read this, my friend Kelsey, the one who's a designer at Pepsi, who was like speaking into my life knowing nothing about theater. She gave me this book called Anonymous, and it's basically about the life of Jesus, how we literally see Jesus, and he died when he was like 32, and we only see his ministry, which started when he was like in his mid 20s. So
Mm.
like there were all of these years in the Bible that we don't hear about Jesus at all. We don't know
Right.
about him. We don't know what he was up to. And so basically this book was like Jesus, who knew that he had this calling that he had to fulfill and that he was like getting ready to step into, was every day was like, okay, God, is it time for me yet? And God was like, nope, like keep making chairs, like
Right.
keep doing what you're doing. And I
Yeah.
just feel like that has been like so much
Mm.
of 2020 has been me being like, God, like, is it my time yet? Like, is it my time yet? And him being
Wow.
like, like, until you sacrifice that this isn't your time anyway, like,
Mm.
this is about you serving the art. It's about you serving the piece. It's about you serving others through this. Like, we're going to have a time where you don't feel like you are making progress. Um,
Yeah.
and I
Wow.
feel like it's hard too because I feel like what's hard now too is that we live in a time where all of it is about like self promotion, content creation in a way that brands yourself and so that people want to work with you. And like it's all about us.
Mm-hmm.
And our whole degree was like that basically. I mean, not
Yeah.
okay,
Oh,
that's not true.
yeah.
But
Well,
it's like,
it can be. Theater can really be about that. How do you
yeah,
fit in, and how are you going to
yeah,
make yourself fit in?
right. And so I think it's one of those things where like I have just learned I've had to reshape like why am I even doing this?
Yeah.
Because if it's about me, like that's probably not a good enough reason. And
Mm.
then it's cool because in that same interview with the guy I talked about earlier, Quentin, when he talked about the best piece of professional or personal advice he's ever gotten. And the other one that he said was to remain anonymous. And so in his work and his life,
Mm.
he's like, I have to let my work speak for itself. And like, he's not on social media at all, like all this stuff. And I'm just like, wow, I think that part of like the defeat, like the utter like defeat and like mental hardship that comes with a career in this is that it is so personal, but it
Yeah.
is so much about just constantly getting rejected.
Yeah.
So like, you're literally like over and over daily being like, here's my heart, here's my work, here's my love. And people are like, nope,
Yes.
you know?
Right.
And so I don't know. I just think that like, for me, a lot of it has had to do with my faith, but I think too, like for people who are like, I don't really relate with that. It's like, we have to know that like, there's always gonna, I don't even want to say this because I've heard this so many times and it never resonated with me until this year of like, there's always going to be someone better. There's always going to be someone better for the role. There's always going to be someone thinner or you consider to be better looking.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are meant to be in a piece, like it's going to happen. And I think that's what's hard about right now is like, I have a lot of friends who go to like, or who went to what we consider like big name programs, and like people who I see like all throughout my time at Coast or my time in Chicago, I'm like getting up early to go to these auditions, and I get online and it's like XYZ books Broadway. And I'm like, what? I'm like, she's my age. Like, how is this already happening for her? And I think that what I have to constantly come back and tell myself is like, this isn't about me.
Yeah.
You know, because like if we, and we're seeing like right now in this current time, we are seeing how art is changing the world.
Right.
You know? And so I think I would rather have to wait a little longer and be a part of art that changes the world than just like kickball change my way through like 42nd Street at regional theaters forever. You know what I mean? Because that's not like, and it has the potential to change people's lives and inspire, but it's like, I would rather be patient, you know, and get to do work that is like, that like matters, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't even know if that answered your question at all. I don't even remember what the question was.
Well, you know what? It was brilliant. No, so I enjoyed it. I don't remember what the question was either, but I like what you said.
Whatever.
But gosh, that patience part, like, I feel like it's so much easier said than done, but like, it's a practice. And I guess that just has to replace, I want it has to be replaced with, I can wait. Like, it'll be worth it, you know?
It will be worth it. And knowing that, like, I think the hard thing too is that because in our 4-year program, everything is about us and our skills and refining those. And then you get out into the workplace and you're like, wait a minute, this actually kind of has nothing to do with that. Like very rarely will people get roles because it was like, oh, they were just the best one.
Right.
You know?
Yes. It blows my mind.
There's so much more to do that with something else than that. So I'm just like, yeah, like I can, you know, grind all I want, but if I'm unhappy, like, why am I even doing it anymore? Or if I'm not fulfilled, or if I feel like my art isn't doing anything, like, why do I even do this anymore?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
definitely. Wow.
Crazy times.
It is. But I mean, I'm really glad to see that you seem to be in a very positive mindset and that you're excited and motivated for the future.
Yeah.
I mean, going forward, you just feel like it's just keep on keeping on with what you've been doing and what you've been planting and growing.
Yeah. Just like laying a strong foundation of like why I want to do this, who I want to do it for, and kind of taking myself out of it, like just keep on fostering those things. And I know it's not going to be easy. And I do want to say, like, this has not been easy. And these are things that I've like come to like after the fact. These aren't things that I was like walking to my audition, getting rejected for the 7th time in a week, being like, but God's in control. Like, I wasn't doing that. I was like, fuck my life. I was like, I literally don't even want to be doing this anymore, blah, blah, all this stuff. So it's like, I don't want people to think that like I am just, you know, happy go lucky and my life is all flowers and roses, because it's not. And no one's is.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think that, I don't know, just just continuing to do the work, continuing to like thank people who allow me to do the work, continuing to invest in people who also want to be doing the work. I think that it's a cool opportunity, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Good. Well, and also, you know, since we are in the midst of quarantine, you've had a lot of time to process and reflect on the past year. So I think that's what, you know, allows you to give this wisdom on to me and to anyone who might watch this in the future. So.
Yeah. Totally.
So that ended up being a blessing too. So
yes, time to process, time to slow down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh,
love it.
well, thanks so much, Emma. And
Yes,
it's Narrow Way to Broadway is the podcast.
yes,
And where can people
yeah.
find that?
They can find it on Instagram at NWayBway, or they can find it on Facebook at, I mean, it's, it just is Narrow Way to Broadway. We have a page you can like, or if you ever want to email us and just tell us if you like the podcast or anything like that, and you don't want to DM us, we have an email address, which is nwaybway@gmail.com. I think that's what it is. Nway, yeah, NWayTOBway or NWayBway. I don't even know. Dang it, I shouldn't have said that.
Okay.
But yeah, we have an email address.
I'm sure they can find that on the Instagram or Facebook page if they want to find the right one.
Yeah.
Or they could just try sending it and see if it goes through.
Give it a go. Bless someone else if it's the wrong email address.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Emma, thank you for sharing your heart and your experiences with me.
Always, Kira. I just love you so much. And thank you for doing this and lifting up the voices of all your pals. You're just the best.
Yes. Well, I've got great pals, so I definitely want to make sure their experiences are heard.
You're the best. Thanks, Kira.
All right. I love you.
I love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.